My name is Jaxon. When my son called me a nobody in front of his wife, I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't beg him to respect me. I simply smiled, reached into my pocket, and quietly took out the house keys. That smile cost him more than he could ever imagine. My name is Jaxon, and I am 60 years old. For most of my life, I believed that being a father meant sacrificing everything without expecting anything in return. I believed love alone was enough. I believed children would one day understand the weight their parents carried for them. I was wrong. I raised my son, Ethan, alone after his mother passed away when he was just 9. I worked double shifts at a construction site, came home with bleeding hands, and still found the strength to help him with homework. I skipped meals so he could have better shoes. I ignored my own pain so he could chase his dreams. That small house we lived in, I built parts of it myself, brick by brick. It wasn't just a house. It was my life. When Ethan grew up, he moved to the city, got a good job, and married a woman named Claire. She was polite at first, but there was always a certain look in her eyes, like she was measuring my worth, and to her, I never measured up. A year ago, Ethan convinced me to come live with them. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone," he said. "The house is too big for you anyway. Sell it, come stay with us." So I sold the house I had built with my own hands. I handed over the money to Ethan so he could invest it for me. I trusted my son. That was my second mistake. The night everything shattered started with a simple dinner. We were sitting at the dining table, me, Ethan, and Claire. The house was beautiful, modern furniture, expensive lights, soft music playing in the background. I felt out of place in my old jacket, hands rough from years of labor. Claire placed the dishes on the table, sighed loudly, and said, "Ethan, your father should really learn some manners. He eats like he's never seen food before." I felt my face grow warm. I smiled politely and lowered my eyes. Ethan laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, Dad, try to fit in a little." That word hit me. Fit in. As if I didn't belong in my own son's life. Later that evening, while I was washing my plate, I heard Claire whisper loudly enough for me to hear. "I don't understand why he even lives here. He contributes nothing. He's just a nobody." Silence followed. I waited for my son to defend me. Instead, Ethan sighed and said, "Yeah, I guess you're right." That was the moment something inside me cracked. I turned around slowly and asked, "Did you just agree with that?" Ethan looked uncomfortable. "Dad, don't take it so personally. We're just being honest." Honest? 60 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice, reduced to honesty. I nodded slowly, smiled, then I walked to the small drawer by the door and took out the house keys. Ethan frowned. "Why are you taking the keys?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Because a nobody doesn't need access to a house that isn't his." Claire smirked. "Good, maybe now you'll stop being a burden." I didn't argue. I simply placed the keys on the table and walked out into the cold night. I slept that night on a park bench. At 60 years old, my bones ached. My heart hurt more. But as I stared at the dark sky, something strange happened. I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove my worth to anyone. The next morning, I went to a small legal office downtown. I had kept copies of every document from the sale of my house. The lawyer looked at me with wide eyes when I explained everything. "Sir, the money from the house sale is legally yours. Your son has no right to keep it or invest it without proper documentation." So we made some calls. It turned out Ethan had used most of the money to buy that fancy house. The same house he said I was a nobody in. 3 days later, Ethan showed up at the cheap motel where I was staying. His face was pale. His voice shaky. "Dad, what did you do?" I looked at him calmly. "I asked for what's mine." He ran his hands through his hair. "The bank froze our account. The lawyer said the house might not legally be ours anymore." I nodded. "You built your life on my sacrifice. Then you called me a nobody. Now you know how fragile borrowed success can be. Claire appeared behind him, furious. You did this on purpose. I smiled softly. No, you did, I just stopped being silent. In the end, the house was sold. The money returned to me. I bought a small, peaceful place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just quiet, warm, mine. Ethan tried to apologize. He said he was stressed, that he didn't mean it, that he was influenced by his wife. I listened. Then I said, respect delayed is respect denied. You don't get to break someone and then ask them to stay whole for you. I forgave him. But I didn't move back. Some lessons require distance to be understood. Moral of the story: never mistake silence for weakness. Never think the people who sacrificed for you are nobody. The strongest people often walk away quietly. Not because they are weak, but because they finally remember their worth.